Yeah, it is.
Wait, what is happening right now?
I don't know. You had a little.
It's currently 3 p.m.
Oh my god, is that Alexa Plus?
Oh.
Hello and welcome to the Android Police Podcast. My name is Daniel Bader.
My name is Will Sattelberg.
And this week on the show, we have a very special guest. It's, we here at the Android Police Podcast, we love a good crossover episode. When Star Trek: The Next Generation met Star Trek: The Original Series.
He's already recording with us. You don't have to pander to him.
We do love a good crossover. And this week's show is all about crossing the streams, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well described.
Standing next to somebody at a urinal. Nope, we're not going to go there.
Offering a helping hand any way you
You're
can.
on your own on this one. I don't even know where you're going here.
On that wet note, welcome to the show, Michael Fisher. How are you?
1 minute in and we're off the rails. I am great, Daniel Bader. Thank you for having me. We make for a lovely trio, don't we?
We do. So we're really glad to have you back. And this week's show is not just a friendly visit. You're here on business.
Correct.
And if you listen to the show, you've likely heard that Clicks, the company that you helped co-found and are an integral part of and are largely kind of the public face of it these days, launched Android versions of its popular keyboard case. And we wanted to have you on to talk about that launch. The embargo lifted yesterday, if you will, and you've been doing a lot of press around it. You yourself have a video on YouTube where you go over the lineup.
Yes, indeed.
You know, it's an exciting time, not only because we now get to put a Clicks case on a bunch of new devices, including the Pixel and soon the Galaxy S25 and one of your favorite devices. If you're watching the video feed, you can see Michael holding up the phones. We'll let you talk about the entire lineup, but I think it's also an interesting time for accessories in general because Qi 2 has sort of kind of ushered in a new generation of magnet-friendly accessories for Android, something that Apple users and iPhone users have enjoyed for a few years now. And I think this is a good kind of opportunity to take stock of where we're at in terms of augmenting the device that's in our pocket, right? Last week, we talked about the death of AI hardware, and I think companies like Humane and Rabbit and many other dedicated kind of hardware startups have run up against the fact that the phone is ubiquitous. Everybody has a phone, and that's still largely the center of our digital life. So to that end, maybe you could give us a little preview of some of the ideas that you guys are working on with Clicks beyond just the keyboard. So
yeah, I mean, you're like scratching the itch that I came here with, so I appreciate it. I loved those AI gadgets when they were announced. I was listening to you all last week, as I often do, and I really wanted Humane to work, right? I really wanted Rabbit to work, and Rabbit, as you mentioned, is still chugging along and iterating and hanging in there. And I think if I had any more time in my day, I would go and retry that thing because it's been almost a year and I have no idea how much it's evolved or hasn't. But they're still there. They're still trying. But Humane ran face first into this reality that no one wants to give up their phones. In fact, everyone is more addicted to them than ever. So, and then I've got a problem where I'm a full-time phone reviewer who's just bored of 80% of the things I have to touch. You guys, I don't know if you can relate to that. Will?
No, not one bit.
Mm-hmm. Which is not to say they're bad. Quite the opposite. They're all wonderful phones. This is part of the problem. Everyone is coalescing around common form factors and common approaches. So when the opportunity came, as I talked with you about before, to build an accessory for these phones that makes them more fun, in addition to more productive and whatever else you want to use these things for, I just absolutely jumped at it. And that's why when we brought things to Android, I think phrased it this way in my video. I was like, you kind of knew we were going to do this. You kind of knew we were going to bring clicks to the candy bar, but it wasn't until we started messing around internally last spring and literally cutting clicks in half that we figured out that we could build kind of a modern trio.
That was some of the best footage you've ever shown, because
what,
from my perspective, well, it's just the fact that like you and Kevin and a bunch of YouTubers all did essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is to cut a clicks in half and then put a foldable in it.
And more people have showed up since I published that video to tell me that that's what they did. In fact, like, I don't know. It'd be weird to, like, someone very famous sent me a DM and was like, hey, this is what I did with the clicks you sent me. And it was the same exact thing.
Amazing.
And I'm like, what is, I can't believe everyone was on the same like wavelength. Yeah. But in the same way, in the opposite way, I actually can believe it, because I frequently get suggestions from users, from customers, from people on the internet who are like, have you ever thought about this? Have you thought about that? And it's 100% of the time, it's something that we have thought about internally or has been suggested by somebody else. So like, there's a finite number of ideas in the world. And I think everyone, when people get excited enough to share suggestions, it's really fun. But we did have a good laugh at Max Weinbach's expense last CES, where I think he was the 85th person to ask us in a day. He's like, have you ever considered a slider? And I think Crackberry Kevin was just like, no, Max, no, never. No, that's not something that's ever crossed.
I can actually picture him saying that.
Anyway,
right, before we get ahead of ourselves, because that is what we tend to do on this show.
Yeah,
let's give the few listeners that haven't seen your video or heard the announcement a rundown of what Clicks announced yesterday.
Sure. We announced that we brought the same or a very similar 37 key keyboard, Query physical keyboard, to the Google Pixel. It is not the one we launched on the iPhone 15 last year. That was a first generation. We iterated very quickly on that, made one for the iPhone 16, which had a lot of improvements that I will not get into. And we are offering that for the Pixel 9, 9 Pro, Galaxy S25, and then a highly modified one for the what's it called? Motorola Razr Plus or Motorola Razr 50 Ultra, depending on your market.
Okay, I do want to actually talk a little bit about the upgrades you made between Gen 1 and Gen 2.
Sure.
Even though you're not explicitly calling it Gen 1, Gen 2, V1, V2, you're talking iPhone 15, iPhone 16, but I want to know about what you learned between those two gens, because a V1 is both easy and hard. It's like, from my perspective, a first novel, right? You get to put all of your ideas out there, and it'll be kind of like just a dump of every thought you've ever had, but it's also going to be messy and flawed and probably not your best work. And then you come back and you iterate and you release something that's better than the original. And I'd love to learn from kind of the behind the scenes of like what was going on during that year of iteration. And were you even aware of some of these problems when you released the V1, already thinking about V2?
100%, because unlike a novel, the building hardware like this is kind of a team effort. So you have the danger of, in my case, of like missing a very important meeting, right? And at some point before we launched the first generation, it was decided, and I don't mean to, I'm not dunking on my team, but like it was decided in my absence that MagSafe, we didn't want to integrate MagSafe into the first gen. And if I had been at that meeting, I'm not sure that I would have won, but I would have fought vociferously for it. I was like, no, this is a mistake. We need to integrate it. So that's something I knew we wanted to do on the second generation. And I will say this, it wasn't a year of iteration between iPhone 15 and 16. We had like 6 months before we had to be ready for 16. So the number of changes we packed in 6 months are actually, I'm quite proud of. A thing that I didn't really register was the key shape. First generation, iPhone 14 and 15, those keys were very flat, very uniform. Everyone uniformly loved them at CES. We got a lot of positive feedback, but the flatness came back to haunt us after a little bit, after extended usage. So adding that like slope where they all fall away from the center line. This our lovely genius designer, Joseph Hofer, who built the BlackBerry Bold 9900 keyboard, like implemented a lot of lessons there. Material choices, the flocking, the stuff. I hate saying it because it's a cliche, but it's like the 16 one is what we would love to have delivered first. Still very proud of that Founders Edition one, but like you say, there are limitations on your first one. And eventually you have to just ship something, right? You have to be like, look, we're out of time. We have to launch this product. We have a deadline. We have a roadmap. Push it. We're proud of it. We think it's worth the money, but next time around, we're going to do even better. And so I think that's the goal.
Okay. So you have a version for the Pixel 9 series, including the 9 Pro, 9 Pro XL, or no?
No, not XL and Galaxy S25, but not S25 Ultra.
Okay. And you sort of hinted at this in the video until your CMO and he's the COO, CMO or
CMO. Jeff wears a lot of hats. The Jeff Gadway, co-founder,
Jeff got up in your edit and
that's right,
redacted a bunch of footage. But
yes, that's basically what happened. What would have happened if he had been able to see the cut? Yes,
but I guess from my perspective, you're obviously working with height as your limiting factor here
for sure.
And I think a lot of people, when they think of a Clicks case, right, they think, okay, well, it's a keyboard, like that's all it can do. But I've seen a bunch of demos, and I've got my own Clicks model, and I'm wondering, it's not just that, right? Like you're talking about this in the context of a productivity device. You're talking about it in the context of sort of you have a case that is now giving you a whole bunch of shortcuts and access to features that are much, I would say, deeper in the settings menu and things like that than they would have been otherwise. So walk me through sort of the evolution of that thinking. It kind of reminds me, again, like maybe this is an imperfect metaphor or analogy, but like the way that Apple initially marketed the Apple Watch as like a piece of jewelry and then eventually turned it into a health device.
Yeah, so I think there's a particular kind of, I don't want to say brain damage, but like, there's a very deep, profound effect in those of us who were around, who were tech nerds when the Palm Pre launched, right? I always reference this because it's the great fallen hero of our industry. And one of the things that launch event inculcated in me in 2009 was that Palm took the time to design a touch area that wasn't the display. You had a touch screen, but on the Palm Pre, there was this like gesture area below the screen. And why? Because you didn't want to obscure the display with your fingers. If you can't see what you're touching, especially at the time, it was kind of awkward. So they let you do things like scroll and navigate the OS on that gesture area. And that is one of the things that was reinforced when BlackBerry did its Android push, and they for that wonderful capacitive scrolling layer on the keyboard, and you could do all those keyboard shortcuts without touching the screen, which means you weren't obscuring what you were looking at. So, yeah, I mean, the base pitch from Clicks is like, typing feels really good and intentional, and in a way that a typing on glass never will. But very shortly after getting the final product in our hands ahead of launch, we were like, wait, iOS also lets us do some shortcuts. And then customers helped us realize very quickly, no, you don't understand. iOS can do anything with buttons. You just have to take the time to program it. And so, frankly, when I plugged the Nothing Phone 1 into our iPhone 15 Pro Max case, and wow, this works. We expected that, but okay, good. Finding out that the keyboard shortcut plumbing was still in there, that it was baked into Android, that you didn't have to do any of that. With iOS, you have to spend some time. With Android, it's just like, oh yeah, physical keyboard, cool. Search Y launches YouTube, and search N does notifications. Like, the less you have to reach up to touch that screen, not only are you not obscuring things, but also the height stops mattering. You kind of relearn how to hold the thing, and you don't have to touch the screen as much. And then I'm tired of saying it. You're probably tired of hearing it, but you're not sacrificing half the screen to a virtual keyboard.
No, I mean, it's a value proposition, right?
Yeah.
And like with any compromise, you have to think, is it worth it for me, right? For me, truthfully, I don't think it is, right? I can't,
Yeah.
I don't think, unless the phone is much, shorter than most devices today, like that's just, for me, an untenable solution. But
Totally.
I
And
love the fact that it is available to people. And I love the
that's
fact
the
that,
thing, right? Like we were like, we don't want to build, we're not, if we wanted to build a mainstream product, we could, there's other ways to build cases, right? Or there's other ways to
Mhm.
offer some of the functionality we're offering. But that's why we're iPhone first. It was like, can we build a business if only 1 in 1,000 iPhone users buys this? Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
So
to that end, I want to talk a little bit about expectations for Android and the differences and similarities, both in the user experience and sort of the approach to how you're going to, I guess, appeal to the user base, right? So I think there's an obvious sort of lifestyle story with the iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that with some of the initial press. It got pretty mainstream press. People, iPhone plus BlackBerry keyboard equals mainstream appeal, right? Like there are a lot of iPhone users that were BlackBerry users a decade and a half ago and wanted that experience again, right? And yes, that's true of Android. Obviously, Android got its start with keyboard phones as well, famously the Droid series. But I don't think there's the same, maybe not the same level of affection there, right? Android has always had its own subculture, and I don't know if keyboards have been part of that subculture for a while. Maybe a little bit in some areas, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on, like, okay, Pixel user, okay, Galaxy user, like how are you appealing to them? Is it the same message as it is to an iPhone user?
Yeah, because a lot of, again, we started talking about how phones have become sort of like, equivalent to the degree where when Clicks is in my Pixel 9 Pro and when it's in my iPhone 16 Pro and they're sitting next to each other, like, thank goodness we did different colors for Android because I can't tell them apart unless they're face down. That's like, it's the big bummer. But that also means we can offer the exact same utility to Galaxy S25, to Pixel 9 Pro users. But the thing is, like, you're right. There are fewer users. There are little subcultures of kind of dwindling numbers. But the people who were in love with their BlackBerries, there was a whole 5-6 years there where BlackBerry was an Android-powered product. When it was BlackBerry Mobile, it was TCL.
That's true. And
a lot of those people did not switch to iPhone once the BlackBerry, couldn't support them anymore. They stayed on Android, and most of them, this is anecdotal, I can't back this up with data, but most of them, in my experience, went to Pixel rather than Galaxy. Galaxy being the kind of mainstream option. But there's something about, there's a Venn diagram, big overlap between former BlackBerry fans and people who are now Pixel owners. And that was also reflected in feedback to me every time I posted about Clicks. People would ask for it. I mean, somebody asked for it for a Bux Palma 2 yesterday. So they ask for it for every model there is, but most people were like, when are you going to make it for the Pixel? So we really knew
I definitely want
aim at that.
I definitely want a keyboard case for my e-ink, this Android non-phone. That's definitely a good use.
I'm trying to think of the most. Can I beat that? When is the Red Hydrogen 1 case coming out, Michael?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the problem is, we couldn't get enough depleted uranium to make up for the weight of that device. Yeah,
that's true. It needs an offset of
at least 14 pounds.
10. All right. Are there any advantages from a software perspective to putting it on Android? Right. Yeah. Famously, Android's less locked down. So
it is. Well, first of all, you don't have to, like I say, you don't have to do anything. It just works right out of the box, which is ironic because, of course, it just works is the Apple slogan, right? But you plug in a Pixel, it's like, oh, physical keyboard. Okay, here's all your shortcuts. Here's whatever.
How are people making shortcuts on iOS? Is it with like Siri shortcuts, or is it with
the most basic ones are built in, like Command, whatever they are, like Command C for copy, Command V for paste, Command Space for Spotlight. But to do anything more elaborate, you're building a shortcut first in the Shortcuts app, and then associating it with the accessibility features.
Okay.
So we've tried to make that as smooth as possible in the Clicks app for iOS, but still takes a couple steps. So
Right.
With Android, it's just like, and you can call it up. Like when you're typing on Android, you get this little floating bubble and you can tap into the hamburger menu and you can call up this cheat sheet and just scroll and see all the options you have. Downside is you can't modify them right now. But for Android 16, I think Mishal reported that we're going to see some more customizability on Android 16.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It is. And then there's this one thing that Android does that the iPhone doesn't do, or one thing that's pretty important to me, probably not a lot of other people. It's multitasking. Like you can't do split screen multitasking on an iPhone.
Yeah.
But when you do it on a regular Android phone that's not a foldable with a big canvas, like it's annoying because if you want to do text input, the virtual keyboard just shows up and ruins your day. And you're like, why am I even bothering? With clicks, not obviously there's no VKB to worry about, so you still have both apps fully in view. That's one of the things. But for me, it's just being able to be, that's my chosen platform. Look, it's not a secret. It's just being able to be on Android and do all the things that Clicks lets you do, but not have to go to the iPhone if you can't or don't want to.
Yeah. Let's talk about the version that you created for the Moto Razr. Right.
Yay,
this
yeah.
feels like a pet project of yours to some extent. But 100%. I also think it does speak to, as you said, like that trio-like experience that a lot of people are missing. Plus the fact that because it folds, is no longer a very tall brick in your pocket. So walk us through sort of aside from those initial YouTube videos of people cutting an original iPhone Clicks in half, like how did this come to fruition?
Yeah, so it was actually really great timing. I used to say back when we were starting the company, people would ask like, do you think this is the right time for an accessory like this? I'm like, no, I didn't. When Kevin first called me up and said, there's a potential that we could create a company around this idea, I was like, where were you 5 years ago? That was the time to do this. But it turned out for various reasons that this was a much better time to do that. And nowhere is that more evident than in Motorola's evolution of the Razr. Yeah. I've been testing. We built this for Motorola Razr 2024, and I've been testing the Razr 2023, 1 year older, dimensionally almost identical. It fits fine. It is almost unusable thanks to software differences on the cover screen. Motorola evolved that cover screen so much in 1 year that we couldn't have done this well any other time.
Right.
And we can't do it with Galaxy Flip for other software reasons. So it's like,
because you don't heart Galaxy enough.
Oh, that's a problem. I don't. No, the real problem with Galaxy is it forces you to use the Samsung keyboard on the cover display, and Clicks does not play as nicely with that as it does with Gboard. So, it couldn't have happened.
Would you say that it's
time.
Not a good lock charm?
You're really pushing my buttons, Bader. I don't know. We gotta.
I gotta go write my letter of resignation.
The good thing is that you don't actually work for me anymore. So
but I feel like I need to quit anyway.
No, I get it.
As a matter of principle, right?
I mean, so does your football team. So it's good that you're wearing
it.
Oh man, I can sense tension in the air, which I will dissipate by talking about buttons again.
It's not even the season. It's nothing's happening.
So no, it was just the perfect time, and also, I think this is the thing. I will share this. When I was building that Mr. Mobile video, like, I mean, it's very frustrating to try to make everybody happy, and that's what I have to do when I make a Mr. Mobile video about Clicks, because I have to make sure the Clicks team is well represented, and also I don't say things that it's gonna make their lives harder. But as Mr. Mobile, I can't use another voice. Like, I have to serve that audience first and foremost. So I almost lost sleep over calling the Clicks height in pixel like an issue. Because, of course, in marketing speak, you never call anything an issue. It's like certain potential challenges from a small subset of our customer base. It's like, blow my brain out.
I've written marketing copy before. I get it. It's not fun.
And it's not fun. But the reality is that for some people, the height is an issue, right? And it's why we if we found a way to do a slider, which everybody wants, and whatever, we'd solve it. But the Razr solved it for us.
Yeah.
The Razr's like, here's the world's coolest, most useful 4-inch tiny display. You never need to open the thing. throw it in there. Oh my God, it just works. Hey, let's make an enclosure that fits this really snugly, and let's make it cute with the top layer, and let's make it electric blue so that we kind of pay homage to the BlackBerry 7290. And
oh my God, is that the reason?
Yeah, it is.
Wait, what is happening right now?
I don't know. You had a little.
Oh my God, is that Alexa Plus?
Oh.
Why did that happen?
You're getting a news briefing at 3 p.m.
I got my Samsung brief at 3 p.m. for.
I'm going to be honest. I'm
reason.
Still using the Ultra, and I didn't know that there was audio associated with the brief. I've never heard that.
Neither did I.
I will say
but I didn't ask for that, so I'm not sure why it happened.
Very strange.
I did turn the brief off as soon as my review was done.
Well, yeah.
Because it's
anyway. Sorry about that. Bixby really wanted to be part of this conversation.
I'm always happy to have Bixby far, far away from me. Go ahead.
Sorry. Michael, I want to say, like, so I watched your video this morning. Didn't have time to do it yesterday. Watched it this morning. I'm obsessed with the Razer case, I think. Like, more than I thought I could have been, because to me, it's like, and you pointed out in the video, but it's an obvious problem, but like, the problem with that front screen is that it sucks to type on. Even ignoring that it like blocks most of the screen off, it's still like, I have fat thumbs. It's just not very comfortable.
Tiny.
It's not
you
fun.
gotta really rely on autocomplete. Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And so you've essentially built, like, using this case, kind of the perfect minimalist phone of like, it's a screen size that will be comfortable enough for me to text on, or like Maps is great on it in general. And you know, like the basic things I would need to do with a phone, right? Like the only time I would really need to open it is, I guess, if I want to take a photo.
Right. Or if you want to have a private phone call and you don't have a...
Sure. Right. But you guys make phone calls still? No.
Well, try not to.
Must be a generational thing. I don't know.
But yeah, no, it complements the Razer very well. Yeah.
It's like it, I can kind of see it being the thing that I want to be my phone as I try to like disconnect a lot more in the evening and on weekends, and just have it be more of a communication device than an entertainment device is kind of where I've been with my phone lately. And this does that in a really interesting way.
You have that added layer of friction. Yeah. And I think it was instructive to me to learn how little people know about these phones, but you know, we're getting feedback of all kinds yesterday, just comments flooding in from every social network. And one person said, seems kind of cumbersome if you have to go to all that effort to open it when you need to. And I was like, what? And then there was like a conversation without my participation, and someone else asked about that feedback, and they're like, oh, this person thinks that the case makes it impossible to open the Razer.
Oh,
so I was like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, right. Because they weren't the stills. They didn't watch the video, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But like, so many people don't realize that first of all, that the Razer exists. And second of all, that you can do so much with it closed. But I think a lot of the people who have used it, or at least professionally, a lot of the writing I've seen has been that like, that extra little friction point of having to open it. Like if I opened it today, I sort of failed. I want to be less connected. Yeah, this certainly services that too. And I'll say this, you know, it's prime. We knew we were going to sell the conventional ones a lot more. We're going to get a lot more numbers on the ones, because the Razer is a very niche product.
Right.
So, you know, it was kind of, we were prepared for it not to do very well. It's already in day one. It's outpaced my expectations for sales. And I've seen so many people say, I'm going to go buy a Razer just to use this with. And it was like, Perfect.
I have my cursor, I've had my cursor hovering over the like add to cart pre-order button all day, because I'm here. Like I don't know. Like I think it's so fascinating. And then also on top of that, obviously my job as a phone reviewer means that like we are, you know, probably 4 months away from new Razers, and like they have started leaking, and they have the same design. And I've never been so happy to be like, wait, maybe that's good actually, because if I buy this Clicks keyboard, I might be good. I don't know for sure, because you know, it's leaks, but I've had that thought of like wow, like I think this is the first time I've seen like, you know, and it's so funny because like we saw Flip 7 leaked renders today, and it also looked the same as the previous two generations, and I was like, who cares? Like I don't like, so come on weird. Guys, like figure something out. And then with Razer, I'm like, no, it's good. That's the design it should have. Perfect.
When I'm wearing my Mr. Mobile hat, I don't have to worry about this, but this is the first time I've ever been sitting here in a podcast being like, Oh, I want to say like anyone out there with a Motorola Razr 60 or Razr 2025,
Yeah.
please send. I'm like, no, that's probably like no. I could like get as a Clicks employee.
Anybody out there with a
there we
Razr
go.
2025?
Yes, my
send
media
it to
friends.
podcast at
You do it.
androidpolice.com.
Perfect. I'll be able to visit you shortly.
Michael at MrMobile.com. Okay, so we have this foldable case. I mean, we're going to talk about foldables in the next section, but
Yay!
I think it's interesting that, like, I've used the Z Flip 6. I've used the Oppo Find N3 Flip. I want to say the Xiaomi Mix Flip, right? All of the kind of the cutting edge flip phones, and I come back to the Razr Plus 2024 every single time.
Yeah,
and it's not more powerful. It's not thinner or lighter or better in any meaningful way, right? It's just, I mean, it's better, but like cohesively better, right? On paper, it is not. And I think what Motorola achieved with that is exactly what Samsung has been resisting for 5 years. It is to let the second screen just be a smartwatch, right? Let it just be a version of the phone that makes it easier to do things, right? And like you can treat it like a Z Flip if you want to with just widgets,
right?
Or you can unlock the entire functionality and then have it.
Well, just to pick a nit, I feel like the Z Flip is the one that is a smartwatch on the cover. Like that's what it wants to be because it's so limited. Yeah. Whereas the Razr is like here's a 4-inch phone, and also if you open it on the inside, there's a bigger phone.
What I like about the Razr is that it gives you the option. Like by default, you have those widget pages, and there's an apps page, sure, but you can fully turn off the apps page, can't you? Like from the you can just hide it and use it like it's a Z Flip 6 and have it just be calendar, Spotify widget, some games, right?
Mm-hmm. I guess the reason I say that it's a smartwatch is that today's Wear OS and Watch OS devices
do run apps,
are meaningfully more useful than what Samsung gives you on the front display of the
fair enough.
The Flip 6's cover display is Tizen. It's a Tizen smartwatch. Is that anything?
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm going to push forward with this.
That's good. This wasn't a nerdy enough analogy, and now we've really
we brought it home.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're right. It's not a 1-to-1, but I do think.
Look, I'll say you're right. Motorola has achieved something ineffable with the Razr. I mean, it's some weird witch's brew of nostalgia and beauty and intention and all this stuff. But I would love to build for the Flip because globally the Flip is the more popular device, and also like it does some things better. I've broken every Razr I ever owned because they're so delicate. Whereas the Flip is like might be more boring looking, but it's encased in armor aluminum. And sure enough, I drop this thing all the time and it doesn't care. I dropped this off a bike. And the Razr is like falls off a thing when I'm taking a photo, and it's broken forever. All right, go get another one. So there's things I don't want to like throw Samsung under the bus. We value our partners at Samsung dearly and would like to work with them in the future. But no, I would be saying this even as Mr. Mobile. Like there are things the Flip does better too. But I agree, the Razr is special in a way the Flip is not.
Yeah. No, you're right. And Samsung, I mean, that is absolutely true of all recent Samsung phones. Is that they do the obvious things better than any other Android phone.
Yeah.
But what Motorola does is never obvious.
Which is why I love them, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I will always have affection for the Z series. The Moto Z series.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
Despite its many, many flaws, was so ambitious and so well executed in some ways that I will always just think back fondly of those phones. Not the launch, which had Ashton Kutcher get very mad on stage.
I was sitting next to you for that.
In New York.
No, in San Francisco.
No, Chicago, sorry.
San Francisco.
Was it San Francisco?
Lenovo Tech World in San Francisco.
You're right. I'm sorry. It was 2016 in
Sure
San Francisco.
was.
That's right. In that beautiful old auditorium. I forget the name of it.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
We never figured out what happened there to piss off Aston Krujna.
No, me neither. But I do think that's a feature, not a bug.
Oh man, amen.
Okay, so here's my final question about clicks. You kind of hinted at it. I know you can't get into it, but the clicks button, right? This is a big deal, I think, for you guys, because it's not, as I said, just a keyboard that you attach to your phone, right? You get to do all these interesting things by augmenting the phone with a bunch of other features. Yeah. How are you thinking about sort of the next stage of clicks? I know you can't really say a lot, maybe not, but put on your marketing hat for a second and tell us as much as you can about where you think the conversation might be going.
So I think we've had a lot of reviews of clicks from a lot of outlets, hundreds. I mean, we sell in like 100 countries, so it's crazy. Several of those outlets have said, I don't have much need for a keyboard, but these shortcuts are amazing.
Yeah.
So when you ask about the clicks key, like that is our number one priority. It in terms of in that area is like making a differentiated shortcut experience to make using your phone faster and easier. And this is why on the iPhone ones, it's like just has a clicks logo, but on the Android ones, we changed the color because we wanted to call attention to it a little bit more. It's on some of our special edition ones too. And it's because that's where our focus is going to be once we get enough access into Android, either as a result of help from Google or building our own interface to make that clicks key the sort of jumping off point for everything you do. On the iPhone, it's already there. Yeah. But, as I say, we have 37 keys and you can program each one with different modifiers on the iPhone. So there's 3 different layers. So what is that? 37 times 3 is 21 plus 90. So 117.
You're asking
sure
2 tech writers to
right, yeah. Sorry,
3 tech writers total. I'm honestly impressed.
This is multiplication and addition. Well, it's because I've said this before, but like there's too much utility right now because of the way we have to do it on iOS. There's 3 different shortcut keys and there's 37. So in an ideal world, we find a way to simplify things using that clicks button and slightly fewer buttons. So I think that's all I can say. I think if I were making this video, the Jeff protocol would have cut me off.
We appreciate you breaking your own rules for us.
Sure thing. Thank you for asking about it too, because it's nice to get intelligent questions from people who like to try to understand things instead of people who don't like to try at anything.
I mean, this is going to be sort of a good segue into our next section. But when companies run out of hardware ideas, they make the camera control button.
Sure.
And I think Apple and Samsung in particular in 2024 and now this year have really run up against what you can do with hardware in that form factor and are really leaning into AI and agentic, next generation agentic stuff and software solutions in lieu of hardware innovation. Yeah. And some of them are useful, most of them are not. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think for you, the biggest opportunity is that you've both identified a hardware opportunity that is unique and genuinely useful to a lot of people, and that can augment an additional software layer that basically no other accessory maker can take advantage of right now, or at least has not tapped into as well as you guys have. And I just think that's really exciting. Because I'm the guy who would like run my own distro of like I would run my own basically Windows launchers before, like when Windows 98 was a thing. Like I would run something called Lightstep as a front end of Windows that was completely keyboard powered. So you would basically just get like a prompt.
Use the mouse.
You wouldn't use the mouse. You didn't need to because it was all keyboard based. It would come up as sort of a what's the thing on Mac called when you command space?
The Spotlight.
Spotlight. It was
Yeah.
basically a Spotlight for Windows, but you could basically build your own database of shortcuts.
Nice.
And
Yeah,
it feels very similar to that to my eyes. And
it
I love that
is.
it's coming to mobile finally.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I also like that I have become exposed to a sector of users and makers that I wasn't exposed to before. Like, of course, you watch enough tech YouTube and you're going to stumble upon somebody making something wild. But the number of people who have responded to Click's coverage by saying like, oh, this is great. I don't need that, but I'm going to rip out the keyboard and build it into my like cyber deck. Is like it's wonderful, and it's fun to see where people go with different ideas. To like go against my point before of like, oh, we've thought of everything. Like, stop suggesting things. It's like it's not what I mean to say, because there is an enormous surplus of imagination out there.
Yeah,
and I'm very grateful that the two biggest mobile platforms in existence still have all the plumbing necessary to make it work. So like.
That's it. It's the plumbing.
It's great.
Plumbing. That's right.
And they could have taken it out once Apple forked the iPad into its own thing. It could have removed a lot of that stuff. I mean, beyond raw accessibility, like it doesn't have to preserve all that stuff. Android certainly didn't. And now, as rumors, I guess, circulate that Android and what Chrome OS are gonna like merge.
Oh, yeah.
Like
potentially that Android would replace.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll see even more of that. I hope we do. Otherwise, we have to build our own interface for Android, and I don't want to do that.
All right, let's move on. I want to talk about the Galaxy Z Fold 7 leak that hit Android headlines this week. I think it was it an OnLeaks collab? I don't know. It looked like an OnLeaks. Anyway,
it was.
Michael, I'd love your opinion on this, because it looks basically like the special edition that was released in Korea of the Galaxy Z Fold 6.
The wide boy.
Sorry, go ahead.
You know where I saw that recently? We were flying back from a Samsung event to New York City, and we were accompanied by but we were sharing a flight with two Samsung executives, and we were waiting for baggage, just kind of talking to them, trying to go home, and she pulls it out of her pocket, the wide boy, and I'm like, "You're just flashing that around here, like you're not directly insulting all of us American tech nerds who desperately want it." And she laughed, and we had a fun little laugh about it. But we like the wide boy, don't we?
So I guess the question that I have is, you are a flip/fold user.
Yeah,
is that enough for you? Is that the thing that you want out of the Z Fold, or is it
no?
Is it something else?
No, certainly not. The only way that I'm happy about this is if the Fold 7 is predictable and iterative, because they're going to launch the trifold alongside it. If they do that, then I think we got a ball game. Otherwise, making this look. The Fold 6 is delightfully mature. We've said this a bunch of times. It's a foldable that I recommend to people who want a large format foldable. I don't know if it's delightfully
mature. It is mature. I'll give
Fair
you
enough.
that.
Fair enough.
I don't know if I'm delighted by it.
No, you're right. It's predictably, satisfyingly mature, maybe.
I'll take it, yeah.
But it doesn't spark, inspiration. No. It doesn't inspire me in the way that almost any of the other ones do. So I think this has to be accompanied by something that does. I think Samsung would be wise to fast track it if they're not.
And the rumor is that that the trifold will be there at whatever Unpacked event they have this summer. Although who knows when it'll launch, if it'll be region exclusive to a few places, I don't know. Who knows if it'll cost $8,000? Who knows, right?
Yeah, right.
But I am genuinely more interested in the Fold 7 than I would have been like 2 weeks ago, purely because I know we aren't getting an Open 2 this year. And so I'm like, okay, well, now I'm down to like a Pixel 10 Pro Fold that we know nothing about. From as far as I'm aware, there has been no like real substantive rumors or leaks. There's certainly not like renders or anything. I have no idea what that phone's going to be. I assume a thinner, maybe lighter version of what we got last year. And then this, which is a thinner, lighter version, bigger version of what we got last year. And to me, that kind of like solves a lot of the problems that I had with the Fold 4 and 5 and 6. But to your point, it's not particularly exciting. This is more Samsung catching up in a product category that it launched, rather than jumping ahead in the lead, which is what you will get from the trifold if and when it launches.
And isn't it like it's a shame because we have to keep two realities in our head at the same time. One is that from a business perspective, Samsung is doing a lot right, and it is doing what many companies are trapped. It is executing a pattern in which many other companies are trapped. We know how to do this. We know how to do this a little bit better this year, so we'll do it a little bit better this year. We'll just keep iterating. Apple does this, whatever. So like, from a business perspective, I get why this is happening. And Bader, to your earlier point, like a lot of the focus has shifted to AI stuff because sure, that's for a host of different reasons. But on the flip side, when you are not just working in our space, this is not a rant about having to do our jobs, but when you appreciate new and exciting stuff, it can get so frustrating to be subjected to the same design and overall feature set for the fourth time in a row that you end up at a San Jose speakeasy yelling about it after just a few drinks, as someone I know did.
What?
Well, listen.
Never.
I was a little under the influence, and I had feelings.
Oh, that was you. Oh, that's right.
It was me.
I was yelling.
A nice bar, though.
It was a nice bar, and I was yelling right with you because we were both frustrated about the same things. So yeah, I think Samsung has sort of gotten the message if that reporting can be trusted from a couple of months ago of people having internal meetings about wanting to inspire the world again, and I hope that's true.
Last week we talked a lot about the Oppo Find N5. Given that that's sort of the pinnacle of foldable hardware that we have right now, what are your thoughts on it so far? Because it is kind of amazing in a lot of ways.
Yes, it is. I share your frustration that it's not coming here. I think it's crazy that it's also not coming to Europe. So it's like, wow, it's like an Honor. It's actually worse than an Honor foldable because those do come to Europe. So what's happening? I have not had time to develop a really fully cohesive opinion about it, except to say that what everyone else says is correct. It is exceedingly thin. And as you said last week, Bader, when you use it, you kind of forget sometimes that it's a foldable. I was saying this about the Pixel 9 Pro Fold in a different context, but like you often don't have to open it up, and that's pretty wild. There are other reasons that I wanted OnePlus to bring this to the States other than just being able to buy it in America and exert further pressure on Samsung. And that's like OnePlus would have done a leather back or done some kind of color variation that gave it a different sense of style. And I feel like if there's an objection I have to this phone right now, it's that it's quite conservative stylistically, and I wish it weren't.
That's true. I mean, I guess that is a concern. It feels like more of a first world problem in that it's an aesthetic problem rather than a utility problem. But
sure, yeah,
you're right. I mean, we're at the point now where we get to pick those nits, and
yeah.
I agree. It's not a looker in any meaningful way, but it is and I have a bunch of issues that I didn't think about or I hadn't formed opinions of last week. In particular, the haptics on it are just inexcusably bad, and the speaker volume is also pretty weak. But and I'm increasingly unhappy with Color OS, and I think that is another thing that is a divide between sort of Western and Eastern audiences. Still, Color OS has improved a lot over the last few years, but it's still not what it needs to be.
Agreed.
It kills Audible while I'm listening to it. Still, like even though I've turned off the optimized battery stuff, like it still does it.
And this is why
these things feel like
this is why you want a OnePlus tuned, because it'll run a similar version of a Color OS, but at least it'll be tweaked for our market, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
the batteries are there. The batteries are big enough that I don't understand why they're still doing that. We are out, especially any company using silicon batteries. It's like, you guys figured it out. We're good now. Like if you're packing this size of a battery, I mean, like part of that Fold 7 leak is that it's going to use a 4,400 milliamp battery again for the 4th generation, I think. And it's like that's the place where you maybe need those type, but I don't want it, but like I can at least understand why, like where those types of utilities, I guess I'll call it, came from. But like no, I like, I haven't used an Oppo device, like a recent Oppo device, but like the OnePlus 13, I mean, like I don't think I could kill that thing in a day if I tried, like truly.
Yeah.
And it would be very similar if that phone was brought here as the Open 2. I would probably, I mean, it'd be a little easier because it's got a bigger interior display, but like I don't know, like that company, like those, like they have it figured out. Like, what are
And
we
isn't
doing?
that, I think that's a shame, because I think there's a lot of factors that go into this. But if you look at the large format foldable market as a whole, I'm starting to think that what we're seeing, to like go along with the fact that prices haven't come down,
Yeah.
is and there isn't an aggressive move by a lot of companies to penetrate other markets where it might matter, like the States, is that like all these companies have just decided that there is a very narrow corridor of opportunity, and that is in China and a couple other markets. And that's what they're going to focus on. And it's going to forever be this niche category, when in 2020, 2021, when the pace of innovation was still so rapid. If you asked me back then, I would have said, yeah, by 2024, they're going to have the creases are going to be gone. Battery life's going to be solved. And these things are going to be $1,300, and the prices are staying the same. Markets in which they release are diminishing, and the buzz is all but vanished. So like, what a bummer.
Well, and it's still, so many people still have not seen these in real life, right? Like
Yeah.
it is not easy to find, or it is not hard to find someone who has never held a foldable, let alone like seen one. And maybe they saw someone on the bus using it, but like I like, a year ago was showing people the Open, and like they're blown away. Like you can't tell me that like you can't get people if you can bring the price down. Again, it doesn't even need to be under 1,000. I think you're right. I think if you bring it down to like S25 Ultra levels of like 36-month like payments, I think you could get a lot of people on board with this form factor. And we're getting to the point where it's like the downsides to carrying around one of these are not, they're lighter than they were. They're much that, I mean, that thing, like that's the exact same. The Pixel 8 is that size. Like that's how thick the Pixel 8 is. And so to me, it's like, you guys got there, but you just like gave up while you were getting there. Like you decided, even though you kept pushing forward in to make these things like thinner and lighter and more durable, you like simultaneously like threw in the towel and were like, well, no one bought it in 2022, so I guess no one cares. And I don't understand. And simultaneously, like, and I'd be curious to see what you think about this, Michael, but they've all like converged on one form factor. We did smartphones again, where like there were interesting, there were different like the in 2023, the Pixel Fold, the Galaxy Fold, Z Fold 5, and the OnePlus Open all had like different, like slightly different takes on what
the Oppo Find N2.
Yes, those looked different.
Yep.
And now they're just all kind of OnePlus Open
convergence,
clones.
right?
Yes, and I'm sitting here being like, you guys learned nothing about like differentiating your product and like experimenting with like what works and what doesn't. And maybe it just is that like these should all have like nearly 1:1 aspect ratios when you open them, and so that they can have normal screens in the outside, and that's just what people want. But like already, like this is barely, like, I know we're 6 years into this, I guess, but this still feels like a relatively fresh product category. And to just be like, I guess this is what it is now already, like, imagine if like we had done that in iPhone is 2007 and Android is late 2008. So let's say 2014. If we were just like, well, what smartphones are in 2014 is what they are, and like, I don't know, like I just like I don't know what we're doing. Like it's very confusing.
It's confusing, and it's difficult to figure out where to direct my frustration, because I'm sitting here going like, meanwhile, Apple is able to just, continue printing money based on a phone that I think by the time this airs will be, I mean, it's already announced. It's like a phone that is their cheapest offering, which is hundreds of dollars more expensive than their last cheapest offering, and takes away a lot more features from their flagship series. And it's like, okay, that's filling a different kind of gap for a different kind of customer. I don't fully understand it yet, but I'm trying to. But at the end of the day, it's one of the more non-distinctive slabs out there.
Yeah.
And so am I frustrated about that being offered? Or am I more frustrated that like hundreds of millions of people are going to be like, yes, that. Like, I try not to let my exasperation with mainstream culture leak out past my mask, but I'm like, it's the same thing as when people choose the boring color.
Yeah.
Man, I don't really care. How could you not care? Well, that's what makes us nerds. And that's just the reality of it. I don't know. I wish techno was able to get into more markets so it could exert pressure. I wish all these things shipped in greater quantities so that the economies of scale worked out and the prices could come down. Like, I wish that virtuous cycle had ever gotten started.
Yep.
And I'm very frustrated that it's stalled. But on the flip side, the flip phone category seems to be doing quite a bit better. Just anecdotally, I see them around often now in New York City.
They're easier to find for sure.
Yeah. So that's
good. And like, and people like especially iPhone users are like, when I'm carrying a Razor or something, like they are drawn to it.
Always.
Like, the shift hasn't happened, but I did wonder at the time of like will RCS support push at least some people to this sort of device? I don't. It's probably not.
I don't know if that by itself. But Motorola is quick and quick to point out and loud when doing so that its biggest customers from the Razor, I think a large portion of the Razor customer base is iPhone converts. So it's working for them.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to use the last few minutes of the show to talk about Amazon's announcement for today. If you have an Amazon speaker in your room that you're listening to this show on, mute it, because I'm going to use the word Alexa a
There's
lot.
no way to not the product is Alexa Plus.
Like, it's called Alexa
we
Plus.
Have to.
So we're just gonna we're not even gonna beep it. Like, that's too much work for Jules. Today in New York, Amazon finally announced its AI-powered follow-up to Alexa. It's called Alexa Plus. It's an LLM-powered version of its voice assistant, smart assistant, whatever you want to call it. It's coming to the US in beta next month, and then it will roll out to other countries in the following months. It's going to be $20 a month if you want to subscribe to it on its own, but not surprisingly will be bundled in with Prime, which is cheaper.
Which costs
is $15 a month or $130 a year if you subscribe to
for now I give it 3 months before that Prime subscription price increases again. But
I don't like you making me think about it on a weekly basis like that. That makes me sad. It bothers me once a year. I spend some money and then I forget about it. But you're right. That's a lot of money.
Okay, this is sort of interesting and not interesting at the same time. It's interesting in that Amazon is not. It's using its own model called Nova, but it's also model agnostic in that it ties into a bunch of third-party models, including Anthropic, and it will choose the right one for the right task in real time, and it will work with existing Echo devices, including the Echo Show 8, 10, 15, and 21. So you don't have to buy new hardware to take advantage of it. I was thinking yesterday why my Nest Hub Max, which I use all the time, is still so stupid, and why Google hasn't updated its Nest speakers to support Gemini yet. And I do wonder if it's just not capable, like the hardware is just not powerful enough.
I think that's what it is. As I recall,
it is
from
nice
conversation with Rick Osterloh, that's new hardware would be required for their new stuff.
That does not surprise me.
Yeah.
So it is nice that if you have an existing recent, not, you can't use like the original Echo speaker that you bought a decade ago, but it will work with the subsection of Echo devices that people already own. This to me is not interesting as a piece of software. I don't understand why this warranted its own launch event. Obviously,
can I be harsher? Actually, this put me in a bad mood. This whole event really kind of soured my morning. So So Amazon, anytime they do these things, they don't do live streams. They're like the only company that doesn't do live streams. You either have to be there in person, or you can follow their blog posts, or you can go to something like The Verge, who's doing a live blog. And that's what I did. I followed along with The Verge's live blog to try to see what they were going to announce so that I could do my job at Android Please. Didn't matter anyway, because Slack went down, so I wasn't able to report on anything anyway, but whatever. And just every single, they took, it was like an hour and 15 minutes. They took like half an hour to even get to the point. They kept just talking about like AI gibberish, which I have become increasingly convinced that whenever you read people talking about AI, if they suddenly dive into like nothing but jargon, they are trying to convince you that they know more than they do. I'm starting to figure out that like the AI jargon is like a tell of like they don't know how to market this to you, so they're just going to throw a lot of words at you like tokens and so on to try to make it sound really technical and really impressive when it's just kind of an upgraded version of what we've had for a decade.
And
That's
the flip
where
side
I'm
of that is that if that generates coverage that quotes those figures, then
Absolutely.
the next time they need to go raise more money, they can point to that and say,
it's a win-win for them.
Look at that.
A win-win for them. But I'm catching on to you, person. I'm not gonna name specific names here. And so I'm like I'm following along, and I'm currently actually trying to like scroll through because I was in a group chat talking about this announcement and trying to find my thoughts on it. And I frankly like they were announcing so much, and yet it was all stuff we've seen before. It was like, oh, Alexa Plus made a bedtime story for my kid. I'm like, didn't it already do that? Like, didn't you guys do that a decade ago? You had all those kid-friendly Alexa devices. They kept being like, they do the thing every AI thing does, which is like, we can help you buy things. We can help you book a reservation at a restaurant. I'm like, I don't like, it's not challenging to do that. They're like, oh, it can do Airbnb stuff. And I'm like, I don't care about that. The most confusing one, and I know this is difficult to like talk about because again, they didn't actually show this conference. You had to follow along with a live blog. At one point, they were like, hey Alexa, did anyone take out the dog yesterday or the day before to show how it integrates with a Ring camera? And it's like, brother, if the dog hasn't gone out in 2 days, you're going to find out. Like, you do not need to ask Alexa. You will know if the dog hasn't gone outside in 2 days. What are we talking about? Like, at one point, there was like, oh, play the... they're trying to show how you don't have to use what they called Alexa Speak. And it was like, play the music everywhere, but don't wake the baby, which Alexa Plus recognized as don't play music in your nursery. How is that any more natural to say than play the music everywhere but the nursery? Like, I truly, I read through this whole thing and I was like, not only are you guys like behind, but none of like, this is as unimpressive as I felt about the last like 2 years of AI. And I really did try my hardest to be like, as I always do when I'm sitting in the crowd at IO or I'm looking at Sam Altman's latest ChatGPT announcement. Like, I try to look at the stuff and be like, okay, put all my priors aside. What is this product? And in the last like 2.5 years of this era, I have every single time been like, I don't see the value here. It's great that they're including it, you know, with Prime, I guess, but good because who is paying $20 a month for this? Like, it's just like a slightly better version of a product that they've been letting rot for several years while they built this. And
nobody is paying.
No, I know nobody's
like,
paying.
That number is just there to make Prime slightly less egregious.
Until they bump it up, until they bump Prime in general up to $20 a month or $160 a year.
Because now they get to point to it and say, hey, Prime also includes Alexa Plus, you know.
Exactly.
That's why we have to make it. Yeah, it's so
yeah, this whole thing, you know, I'm sorry. Hopefully this rant makes some amount of sense without having followed a live blog, but I walked away from that being like, who is excited about this? Who wants this? Like, it's all the stuff that, like, whether you're using Gemini or you're using ChatGPT, it's like stuff that all of those applications already do. It's cool that it's on devices you already own, that they have Google Beat there. And frankly, I do not understand why Google has been dragging its feet to launch a new smart speaker. But other than that, like, I looked at this and I was like, I don't think many people are going to care.
I'll say this in its defense, just technically, because I have some vague memories of hosting an episode of a podcast where I dove into these voice assistants, and I learned about the history of Alexa and stuff. Like they were going to have to pivot to a generative model anyway.
Sure.
Like there's no way it doesn't scale. You have to spend too much with the old model, and the old thing's not very good. So if they had to do this anyway, they may as well make a big deal out of it. They may as well, and they know they're going to beat Google to the punch. So that's another reason to try and get ahead of them on that. And I think there's enough frustration in the smart home space and the smart home assistant space that probably strategically it made a lot of sense. But I agree, those demos, as described, not very compelling.
Well, that's the other problem, is that I am, of course, telling you about demos that I read through someone else's account of seeing these demos, which makes me wonder, like, Amazon, why are you so opposed to live streaming? You own Twitch. Like, come on, just show me the demo yourself. Like, I shouldn't have to read. Right. Look, The Verge does a great job, but I shouldn't have to read their live vlog to figure out what's being announced.
Yeah.
I just don't think they have the cloud infrastructure to support a live stream.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
AWS might have been part of the reason Slack went down today, so maybe you're right, actually. Anyway, Daniel, are you more positive on any of this?
No,
I feel so knee-jerk reaction, but
I'm so okay. Here's the thing, right? Amazon, like Meta, does not own your screen, right? It doesn't own a smartphone platform. It doesn't own a PC platform. It can only really work properly through, I mean, they're talking about a dedicated app for Amazon Alexa Plus. They're talking about a browser, alexa.com portal, and they're talking about, obviously, it working on existing and new speakers. But by and large, people are going to use their voice to access Alexa Plus like they do current versions of Alexa. And that is just not a particularly intuitive thing beyond having a conversation. So you have Gemini Live and the sort of conversational version of ChatGPT are fun gimmicks. Sure. But the second you get to the end point of commit to an action, I stop believing it. I stop trusting it, right? Whether it's buying a ticket to a show or booking a reservation for a restaurant or even buying something from Amazon, which you can already do through Alexa, I do not trust it. I want to see it and confirm it. And the problem is that none of these smart speakers are touch friendly enough or fast enough that you can have a hybrid input model where you basically have to walk across the room to confirm or whatever, see what's on the screen. And that's just not a fun or intuitive way of using this system. And as we've learned with old legacy Alexa and Google Assistant, most people just use it to start playing music or to set a timer. And that's it, right?
Check the weather.
Check the weather. Or beyond that, I'm not using my voice to get into my Ring camera. I'm using my phone for that. So unfortunately for Amazon and for Meta, Google and Apple have a much stronger case to integrate AI assistants because they own both the front end, the back end, and all of the input methods, including voice, if you want it. And Amazon just can't compete. That's why this feels so disappointing, because they don't own the platform, and except for voice, and voice is not an ideal input method for taking advantage of LLMs.
Can I ask you guys a question? Do you leave Hey G enabled on your mobile devices and your wearables?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, but like mostly because I'm just usually, rushing through setup and
do you use it?
No, that's the thing.
Beyond timers, no.
But you use it like on your mobile devices. You use
I'll like regularly will hold down the side button on a Pixel and say like set a timer for 30 minutes. But that's basically it.
Okay, but not the wake word, not the Hey G, the
no.
Yeah. Okay. I just all this talk about virtual home assistants and all this stuff is like causes me to go back to when they were born. And I seem to be the only person standing out there saying, look, your phone has been able to do this for a year. Like if you have a Moto X, you don't even have to say its name. You can say whatever you want. and talk to it. And why are we doing this on speakers? And I'm glad we did, because there are advantages to having it built into home speakers. But it seems to me that since 2014 or so, like they haven't expanded to the degree that I would have thought. And I can't decide, it's similar to what we were talking about before, whether to be frustrated at my own lack of imagination or frustrated at the fact that they're half-baked pieces of crap, that I've never like expanded my repertoire beyond like, what's the weather doing today? What's it doing tomorrow? What's the wind doing? You know, like,
and if this fixes that, I will use it.
Yeah.
But I don't have any faith that it will.
Yeah. Same.
Michael, to your point, I don't think it's an imagination problem, because we spent the first half of the show talking about a product you built that has, 300 whatever keyboard shortcuts that you can do to activate that stuff faster. And I was going to tee up a joke about how Amazon should consider it's a much cheaper product to not have to train models, and instead should make a device that syncs with the product that is in your pocket and has a bunch of buttons in it that constantly, you can hit shortcuts on it. And it was going to be a clicks joke. And instead, I just want to say, like, but no, for real though, like, I don't want to use my voice to do anything. I have been having, for about a week or a week and a half, I've been having a recurring problem where every like other day, my office lights, the shortcut in Google Home for my office lights, because I have 2 lamps in my office, just disappears on every device I have. It just, I literally open home, like I watch the tile disappear and I have to re-add it to every device. I have no idea what's causing this. There's nothing to search for to like troubleshoot it, right? And I have not once until this conversation considered the fact that I could, instead of constantly re-adding the tile back, I could use my voice and like either use the voice command or press and hold the button to turn the lights on. I've been adding it back, frustrated out of my mind the whole time. Like, I hadn't even considered. I did have the thought of like, if I like plugged in my old like Google Home Mini or Nest Mini or whatever, I could just use my voice, I guess. I had not considered that my phone does that too. Yeah. And I feel a little stupid for it, but I think that tells you where I am with these voice assistants, where it's like, I have absolutely zero interest in talking to my phone. Like, and nothing that Gemini has shipped in the past 2 years or year plus, and then all the Bard stuff has changed that. Like, I don't want to, it's not a fun way to interact with things. It never feels natural. It always feels a little embarrassing, even when I'm alone. I really think we're barking up the wrong tree here. I'll do text input with Gemini if I have to, but like, I don't like talking to it.
Yeah. I had a timely occasion this morning. I was playing music in the bathroom while I was showering, and I came out to the living room and wanted to move the music, which, if you've ever used a Google-powered smart home, is tantamount to, I don't know, trying to eat your dinner with like a balled up napkin in your hand. And what happened was I tried to move it manually, knowing that the voice method was going to screw up on the Google Home app, and it said, "Oh, I'll try." And it failed. It failed to move it to the living room speaker, according to the dialog box. But then I heard a slight whisper out of my Google Home in the living room, and I realized it had succeeded and reported a failure. And so I just manually turned up the volume. And that is the first time in a year and a half I've ever gotten simultaneous playback from 2 Google Home speakers. And I think if Amazon, it'll all have been worth it if Amazon can make its voice assistant more functional than that with this AI feature. And it has to hide behind all the demos, all the flashy stuff. And when the reality is, hey, we just fixed all the problems that are also there with Alexa, not just Google Home, then it'll be a great success. The demos will have been a wonderful smokescreen for a product that hasn't worked well in a decade. And now it will. And because if there's the one thing we know about AI is that it always works as advertised. So I think there's no losing sleep over that.
100% of the time. It works every time.
Yep.
All right, that's where we're going to leave it.
Sounds good.
Well, we went over talking in our first 2 sections, so I don't want to prolong the magic here. We're also going to skip the last thing. Will, I'm sorry,
it's fine. The pit.
We'll just talk about it offline.
ER. It's a stupid that lawsuit. Yeah. I'm surprised that lawsuit is moving forward. I thought it would have already gotten thrown out. Was my take on it, because there are a billion shows set at a hospital. Like, what are we talking about? I get that it's got Noah Wiley as a producer, but like, come on, like, let's be. And if anything, my actual thought is I'm happy we ended up with The Pit, which is like at least kind of a fresh take of like, what if we combine these two things into one thing rather than we did ER again. We already have ER. There's like 20 seasons of that show.
That's
like,
what I thought you were talking about Star Trek Sick Bay, the latest Paramount Plus property.
Star Trek Sick Bay.
No,
I have to be honest with you, Michael. I've only been using Paramount Plus to watch Twin Peaks lately, so I have no idea what that is.
You're not indulging in the Taylor Sheridan cinematic universe?
No, my parents love Yellowstone though.
Oh yeah, big boomer action. Yeah. Real fun. I have watched every one of those shows guiltily, and
Sure.
I find them very entertaining, even when they are shoving big oil propaganda down my throat, very clumsily.
I've seen Hell or High Water. I think is the only.
Holy
I haven't even seen Sicario.
That movie rocks.
That movie does rock.
Or it used to rock.
One.
I don't know. I watched it years ago. Does it still rock?
Yeah, it's been a decade, but like I have very good memories of it. I should revisit it anyway.
Yeah.
All right. I want to end the show as we normally do with one thing that's making us happy this week.
Oh, God, don't start with me. I forgot about this.
That's okay, Michael. I mean, I think we probably know what's making you happy this week. But Will, I'll start with you then. What's making you happy?
I impulse bought an OLED TV over the weekend.
Oh, cool. What did you get?
Whatever Samsung's like LG C4 competitor is, the S90D. It was
S90D. That's it.
An okay deal on it. Yeah, it's nice. That's it. I don't have like a in-depth review on it other than like I'm glad to finally have a 65-inch TV in my living room instead of 55. It always felt too small in our room. And OLED is as nice as I thought it would be. I also have a what's making me sad this week, which is I saw Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me at my local art house theater with like a really packed crowd. There must have been like 150 people there. And that movie is the most upsetting film I've ever seen. Good God. I knew it was going to be still really caught me off guard by how much it kind of put me in the dumps the next day. So those are my happy and sad occasions.
I'm sorry, I haven't seen the movie. I'm not familiar.
It's great. 5 stars on Letterboxd, but my God, even knowing what's coming, because it's obviously a prequel, it's still a hard watch.
Okay, good to know. All right, Michael, I'm gonna come to you now. What's making you happy this week?
You know, the obvious answer is all the click stuff, but I will say, actually, I was just looking at my calendar because I know there's something I'm looking forward to. I have 2 appointments this weekend. One of them is to meet up with my college best friend and one of my favorite college professors for a catch up, which will probably involve very little talk about tech, and I'm genuinely looking forward to that. Reconnecting with any remaining part of myself that exists outside this tech world.
Amen.
And then on Sunday, I am going to a place called Bon Bon. It's a Swedish candy company. Not because I want candy, but because they were very kind. If you noticed in my Mr. Mobile video, there's like 2 seconds where I stand in front of a door that says, don't grow up, it's a trap. They were kind enough to close their door in the middle of a business day for me so I could get that shot. So they said, nice. Well, I said, let me buy something. They said, we're not open. Come back on Sunday. We'll have Swedish hot dogs. So I'm excited. Swedish hot dogs are going to make me happy. I'm stoked about that. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hurdy-gurdy. Good.
Hedge.
All right. What's making me happy this week is The Brutalist. So my wife and I watched this over 2 nights, and it was incredible.
A long intermission.
So the video, like the home release is 1 minute, not 15.
Oh well. Okay.
The intermission is 1 minute, but it's still there.
They should have left the full 15 in. They should disable fast forwarding. You have to sit through the 15.
It's an amazing production. The soundtrack is incredible.
I'm so far behind on my Oscar.
It was
not good.
I didn't know what to expect, and it exceeded my expectations by quite a large degree. So if you are in the market for a 3.5-hour movie that is not Killers of the Flower Moon, I would recommend this one.
I've heard Guy Pearce is really good in it.
Everybody's good.
But
every person in this film is good, and Adrian Brody in particular. I know he's not going to win the Oscar. I think it'll go to Timothy Chalamet, but I think he should win it. He was
that's fair.
Phenomenal.
but it's not a music biopic, so legally the Oscars cannot give it to anybody.
Correct. Joaquin Phoenix is happy about that. All right, that's it. Michael, thank you so much for coming back and telling us all about Clicks for Android. We loved
Thanks for the
hearing
time.
about
Love the opportunity.
behind the scenes stuff.
As always, the only thing that makes me sad is I will not be able to listen this week because I just won't.
I get it.
I look forward to coming back next week. No,
we are the only tech podcast out there. So
yes, so I've heard.
There's nothing else to fill your hour.
No. Well, you just be thankful that the Clickscast hasn't started yet because we're coming for you. Big competition.
Is that an official word?
I think that's what we're going to call it. Why would we waste our time trying to come up with more genius?
Fair. No, I mean, is that the official announcement of the Clicks podcast?
Yeah, well, unless something goes really wrong on Friday, yes, we're going to record a limited series for anybody who wants to go behind the scenes of a tech show or of a tech company making a product in full view of God and everybody. So yes.
That's called content marketing, folks, just in case you weren't familiar with it. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening. Podcast at androidpolice.com if you want to send us feedback, comments, tell us what you think about Clicks for Android. Tell us what you think about Alexa Plus and all the other announcements that we talked about this week. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, gents.